All right, so now we are moving on to quadratic equations. So we're still looking at trinomials. All right, so remember trinomials. The basic look of a trinomial is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. This is a trinomial. So we've been looking at factoring trinomials. So now we're going to look at something that we can use for trinomials that don't factor. So we're looking at the quadratic equation. So basically all this is is you are going to be plugging numbers into this equation to find two answers. So the equation, this is always the equation. I will link a video to a song to help you memorize it if you want to memorize it. Usually you have to memorize it, but not this year. So it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. All right, so when we have an equation that looks like this, all right, we're just plugging in a's, b's, and c's into the equation, and we are solving. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is solving quadratics for rational solutions. So this means that the answer is going to be a nice fraction. All right, it's going to be easy to solve. All right, so there's two basic steps for finding the rational solution. You're going to put it in standard form. So remember, the equation is going to equal 0, and then you're just going to plug it into the formula. And those are the two steps for solving quadratic formulas when you're finding the rational solution. All right, so let's see an example. 4x squared minus 8x plus 5 equals 2. So first thing we have to do is put it in standard form. So 4x squared minus 8x, 5 minus 2 is 3, equals 0. All right, so we know that a is going to equal 4, b is going to equal negative 8. It's remember to keep the negative sign. And c is going to equal 3. All right, and remember that the formula is negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. All right, so let's plug that into the formula. So if we have a negative sign here, but b is already a negative plus times a negative, right, it's going to be a positive. So it's going to be positive 8 plus or minus the square root, negative 8 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to simplify this. All right, so if we simplify it, it's going to be 8 plus or minus square root negative 8 squared 64 minus 4 times 4 times 3 is negative 48. Remember to keep the negative 4 in there. All right, all over 2 times 4 is 8. All right, so let's simplify this again. 8 plus or minus 64 minus 48 is going to be 16 over 8. All right, simplify it again. 8 plus or minus the square root of 16 is 4 over 8. All right, so once we get to this step here, all right, we know that we can't simplify this anymore. So this is where we're going to start breaking it off into two separate solutions because we're going to find two answers. All right, we're going to do 8 plus 4 and then 8 minus 4. So, all right, so we have 8 plus 4 divided by 8. All right, we're going to have to simplify that more to 12 over 8. All right, and we want the simplest fraction, so 3 halves. All right, 8 minus 4, That simplifies into 4/8. 4/8 is also 1/2. Alright, so those are our two solutions. 3/2 and 1/2. Alright, so let's look at another problem. 3d squared plus 4d plus 8 equals negative 60. Alright, it's the same exact thing when it's x's, d's, f's. Doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. So first thing you gotta do is put it in standard form. 3d squared plus 10d plus 8 equals 0. Alright, we know that a equals 3, b equals 10, and c equals 8. Alright, we're going to plug it into the formula. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Alright, so let's start simplifying this. Negative 10 plus or minus square root 10 squared is going to equal 100. Negative 4 times 3 times 8 is going to equal 96, negative 96. Then 2 times 3, 6. Negative 10 plus or minus 100 minus 96 is going to equal 4. 6. Right, and finally it's going to simplify into negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 4 is 2 all over 6. Alright, so it's time to solve. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is negative 10 plus 2 divided by 6. Alright, so it's going to simplify into negative 8 over 6, and we're going to simplify that fraction even more to negative 4/3. Right, and then negative 10 minus 2 divided by 6. Alright, we're going to simplify this again. That is going to be negative 12 over 6, and that is going to equal negative 2. We don't even need a fraction for that. So it's going to be negative 4/3 and negative 2 is the solution to this equation. Alright, just a tip for delta math, you will always be able to solve rationals into fractions, or if you saw in the last problem, the fraction negative 12 over 6 is 2. Alright, so there aren't any trick answers that you can't solve any of these. It will always be in a fraction or a real number for rational answers. Alright, so we had this problem on delta math. So first thing we're going to do is solve it. We see that it's already in standard form, so already good with that. So we know that a equals 10, b equals negative 29. It's important to keep a negative 29, and c equals 10. Alright, remember the formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared plus 4ac all over 2a. So first thing we're going to do is plug it into the formula. So negative b, so negative 29 is a positive, so 29 plus or minus square root, it's supposed to be a b, not a 6, 29 squared minus, minus 4 a times c all over 2 times 10. Alright, so what you're going to do now is simplify this. Alright, so we simplified it, so 29 plus or minus the square root of negative 29 is 841. 4 times 10 times 10 is 400. Minus 400 all over 20. All right, we're going to need to simplify this more. It's going to be 29 plus or minus 841 minus 400 is 441 over 20. So it's going to be 29 plus or minus square root of 441 is 21 over 20. All right, so once we get to this step, all right, there's nothing more to simplify in here. So this is where we're going to split off to find the two solutions. So we're going to do 29 plus 21 over 20 and 29 minus 21 over 20. So in 29 plus 21, all right, that's going to equal 50 over 20. On Delta Math, it wants you to simplify it. All right, so the most simplified form of this fraction is 5 over 2. And 29 minus 21, 8 over 20. All right, and the most simplified version of this fraction is 2 over 5. So these are your two solutions, 5 over 2 and 2 over 5. You can also put them in decimal forms, but I find it easier just to keep it in the fraction form for Delta Math. Okay, so this is how you put in your solution into Delta Math. So you are going to go over to this button over here. Right, it will open up here. You're going to press the divide symbol. So it's going to be 5 over 2. And then it's going to be, then you're going to put a comma, and that's how these, a new place to put it in is going to pop up. And it's going to be 2 over 5. It doesn't matter what order you put them in, and like I said before, you could put it in decimals. I just find putting it in fractions is easier. Right, submit answer. Yes. All right, you see that it's right, and it goes through all the steps about how you know that it's right. So that is how you put in the solution into Delta Math for rational solutions.